experience about the 5 ranks than I could possibly cover in a blog post. So this will, of necessity, be incomplete, an overview, a taste. Nearly all human beings are pre-stage 1 in terms of the 5 ranks. In pre-stage 1, you're living in the relative world and don't really know about the transcendent, at least on an experiential level. You're caught in the mind-created world of separate things and events. Pre-stage 1 would include, for instance, all the Suzanne Cook-Greuter stages up through the strategist, which includes 98 to 99% of all people. The magician is probably the first stage that could embody a stage 1 perspective in the 5 ranks. It's possible to have an experience of the transcendent at any stage, but until the magician, it's much less likely that a person would be interested in exploring the transcendent if they did have a spontaneous experience of it. There are, of course, exceptions. Also remember that you will interpret any experience from your current developmental level, and the magician is the first such level to see things at least some of the time in a non-dual way. In pre-stage 1, you live in a solid world of separate objects and separate things, the world of subject-object. In this world, certain separate things do something to other things, and the world is divided into separate events, separate objects, and separate people. This dualistic relative world is a world of good and bad, here and there, yin and yang, life and death, having and not having, appropriate and inappropriate. It's a world where the past and future are real, as opposed to the world where Eckhart Tolle's now moment is the only reality. Once you get to stage 1, though, you've realized that there's more to life than just the relative world. You've had an experience of the transcendent which underlies the relative world, and you've learned how to get into the transcendent when you want to. You can't, however, stay there. When you stop doing whatever allows you to get there, you return to the relative. You can visit, but you can't stay. In the transcendent, everything just is. It isn't good or bad. In fact, there are no qualities to anything, and no distinctions are made. Qualities and distinctions are part of the relative world. What's more, the transcendent has no beginning and no ending. It's unborn and undying. It also has no boundaries. It includes everything. Everything is in it, and it is in everything. From the transcendent, there's nowhere to go because you're everywhere. There's nothing to get because you're everything. And there's nothing to be afraid of because there's nothing outside of you that could threaten you. Everything, including the suffering of the world, is just part of the dance of the universe. Everything is perfect, peaceful, and timeless. In the transcendent, it's always now. You visit this place once you learn how to do that, and it renews you, revitalizes you, beckons you. It tells you that there's something more to life than you thought there was. Eckhart Tolle is inviting people into this space and gives some great hints on how to get into it. Unless you make certain fundamental shifts in perspective, though, your mind keeps pulling you back to the relative world, to the world of the past and the future, and out of the now moment. So that's the first stage. You can visit the transcendent, but it isn't your permanent experience. To get to the second stage, there are some important insights you need to have and certain things you need to drop. The first thing you need to do to get to the second stage is to fully surrender to what is. In doing this, you understand at a deep level that there are certain things about the universe and about being human that just are the way they are. There's no escape from them, and there's no changing them, and resisting them just creates suffering. For instance, people, things, and events exist in time. They come into being and eventually pass away. Because of this, and because to be here as a human being, you have to be attached at least a little bit to the people, things, and events in your life, there always will be suffering in the world. Most people, of course, are attached a lot, and as a result, they suffer a lot. People live, and then they die. There are causes and effects, karma. Sometimes you don't get what you want. Sometimes you get what you don't want. Resistance to these fundamental facts of existence and attachment to it being otherwise creates suffering and keeps you stuck in the relative world. To move into stage 2, you have to surrender to all of this, not intellectually, but at a deep level. This is, by the way, the first of my 9 principles for conscious living. Letting whatever happens be okay. Surrendering isn't passivity, however. It doesn't mean that you don't act to get what you want. It does, however, mean that you understand and accept the way the universe works. Even while you take action, you aren't attached to your actions turning out a certain way. So surrender is the first step in stage 2. The second step is even more difficult. Submission. Submission is generally accomplished by submitting to the living embodiment of the way, the Tao, the way things are. In Zen and in other traditions, this means submitting to an enlightened teacher, one who is the embodiment of the way, the Tao, or whatever you want to call it. Though it could also mean submitting to Jesus, for instance, or some other idealized or non-physical representation. It just turns out to be easier to submit to a living embodiment rather than an idealized one. Westerners, of course, have a lot of trouble with this one. This is probably because we have such an independent point of view, and the idea of submitting to another leaves a bad taste in our mouth. But we also resist it because there are so many egoic and false teachers around, and we've become jaded and untrusting, for good reason. It's difficult to trust that a teacher could really have our best interest at heart and not have some personal agenda. What if he brings out that big barrel of Kool-Aid? Submission, though, is essential for the next step, or at least makes it much, much easier. Because in the next step, you have to do what in Zen they call stepping off the 100-foot pole, stepping into the unknown, and that takes a lot of trust. You have to know that if you step, it will be okay, that someone will catch you. The teacher, having already done this himself, helps you realize that it can be done. He seems to be okay. In fact, he seems more than okay. His example and reassurance allows you, hopefully, to take that leap, to step into the unknown. Submission is, at least partly, your saying, okay, I trust that it will be okay when I take that step. To take that step, you have to go through what Genpo Roshi calls great doubt. This is where you doubt, and I mean really doubt, totally, without reservation, that any of the stuff upon which you've based yourself, your identity, and your life will ever save you, make you happy, solve the problems of being human, get rid of the basics of the human condition, including that all things, including you, are in time and eventually pass away, lead to any sort of salvation or end your suffering. This means that you doubt your ideas about yourself, the world, other people, life, and anything and everything else. All of them. You doubt your concepts, your premises, your way of seeing things, and the memories you string together to create a sense of an enduring you. You doubt all your personal defenses. You doubt the past. You doubt the future, and especially that the future will save you in any way. You doubt the value of all your accomplishments, the badges you've earned. You doubt your identity, your roles, your story, your idea of who you are. You doubt all your healthy eating habits, your meditation practice, your ideas about the way the world should be, your ideas about mental health, and so on and so on. You doubt the separate self. You doubt that any of this will ultimately save you or get you anywhere. You also doubt the teacher, enlightenment, meditation, religion, spiritual growth, personal growth, all of it. None of this, you realize, is going to save you or change the basic human condition. All of these things ultimately are ideas about life, creations of the mind, representations of reality, but not reality.